Trust is a dangerous thing. It lulls you into comfort, convinces you that the people closest to you will always be on your side. But the truth is, trust makes you blind. It stops you from seeing the signs that were there all along, the little shifts, the barely noticeable changes that in hindsight should have screamed at you. I never thought of myself as a jealous husband. Never the kind of man who checked his wife's phone, who questioned every text or side glance. I wasn't insecure, and I never felt the need to be. We had been together for years, built a life, a home, routines that felt solid, unshakable. Or at least, that's what I thought. The photo changed everything. It happened by accident, pure coincidence, or maybe fate deciding it was time I stopped being an idiot. Her phone was on the couch, face up, screen still glowing. She must have just set it down. I wasn't even trying to look, but something about the way the light flickered caught my eye. It was a photo. At first, it was nothing. Just a hotel room, neatly made, soft amber lighting. A city skyline stretched out beyond the window, towering buildings glowing under the night sky. The kind of place people went to escape, to indulge. But we had never been there. I swiped left. Another picture, closer this time. A small table near the window, a half-empty champagne bottle standing beside two glasses. Her hand was visible in the corner of the frame, fingers curled slightly, her wedding ring catching the light. I kept swiping, and then I saw it. A mirror in the background. A reflection. Her. And someone else. His back was turned, but it didn't matter. I didn't need to see his face to know exactly who he was. I felt a heat rise in my chest, something raw and ugly clawing its way up my throat. There was no slow build-up, no moment of disbelief or confusion. Just fury. Instant, undeniable, and all-consuming. It was like a switch had been flipped, and suddenly I saw everything for what it was. She was cheating. My wife. The woman I had loved, trusted, built a damn life with, sneaking around behind my back like I was some kind of fool. And with him, of all people, her ex. The one she swore was nothing. The one she laughed off when I asked why they started talking again. The one she called just a friend when I noticed his name popping up too often on her phone. I had pushed it aside, told myself I was overreacting, that I wasn't going to be one of those husbands. Turns out I should have been. I gripped her phone so tightly my knuckles ached. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, drowning out every rational thought I might have had. I wanted to throw it, smash it into the wall, watch it shatter the way she had just shattered everything between us. But I didn't. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. Slow, deep, steady. Destroying the phone wouldn't change what I had just seen. It wouldn't undo whatever she had done in that hotel room with him. Wouldn't erase the fact that she had been there at all. No. If anything, it would just tip her off. I set it back down on the couch exactly where I found it, taking a step back like the damn thing was poisonous. My fingers curled into fists at my sides as I stared at it, at the device that had just torn my whole world apart in the span of a few seconds. She had no idea that I knew. That thought was the only thing keeping me in control. She would come home soon, walk through the door, smiling like nothing had changed, kissing me on the cheek, maybe even wrapping her arms around me like she always did. She'd talk about her day, ask about mine, sit across from me at dinner, laughing, making conversation, pretending everything was normal. I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. Because I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Let her think she still had the upper hand. Let her believe she was safe, that her lies were still intact. Let her keep playing her little game, completely unaware that I had already found out the truth. She thought she was in control. She wasn't. I was. And she was about to find out just how much that was going to cost her. I sat there for a long time, staring at her phone like it held the key to my entire life. In a way, it did. That little device, that slim, harmless-looking piece of glass and metal, had just detonated everything I thought I knew about my marriage. One picture, one moment frozen in time, and suddenly I was a different man. A man who wasn't in control of his own life anymore. At least, not yet. But I would be. I wasn't going to be the guy who confronted her right away, who let his anger explode in a useless, impulsive outburst. No, that would be too easy for her. Too predictable. I wasn't going to give her a chance to cry, to twist the truth, to manipulate her way out of it before I had everything I needed. I was going to make her sweat. I placed her phone back exactly where it had been, my hand steady, my breathing even. The fury was still there, burning hot in my chest, but I wasn't going to let it control me. Not yet. There was something satisfying, almost darkly amusing, about the fact that she had no idea I knew. Let her come home. Let her sit across from me at dinner. Let her kiss me goodnight. Let her play the role of the loving wife while I sat there, knowing the truth. The sound of the front door unlocking broke through my thoughts. She was home. I leaned back into the couch, casual, relaxed, as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't just seen her in a hotel room with another man. The door swung open, and there she was, stepping inside with that same warm, familiar smile she always wore. "Hey, babe," she called out, setting her purse down by the door. "You okay? You look tired." Tired. I almost laughed. If only she knew. "Yeah," I said, my voice calm, perfectly controlled. "Long day." She walked over and leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. The same lips that had probably kissed him. The thought nearly made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to stay still, to let her do it. She smelled the same, sweet, familiar like home. But that scent didn't belong to just me anymore. I forced myself to look at her the way I always had, like she was the woman I loved, the one I had chosen to spend my life with. But now, that image was cracked, the pieces barely holding together. "Want me to make dinner?" she asked, pulling off her jacket. The normalcy of it all almost made me sick. How easily she slipped back into our life. How effortlessly she played the role of the faithful wife. "Sure," I said, my voice neutral. She smiled, heading toward the kitchen. I watched her go, taking in every detail, her posture, the way she moved, every little thing she did. I was looking for something different now. Signs, clues, the little cracks that had always been there, the ones I had been too blind to see before. And then I noticed it. Her phone, still on the couch, exactly where I had left it. She hadn't even picked it up. I waited, watching, wondering. Would she check it? Would she grab it first thing, see if I had touched it? I had made sure to leave no trace, no screen smudges, no changes in notifications. But if she was worried about something, if she had even the slightest suspicion, she would check. Seconds passed. A full minute. She never even glanced at it. Interesting. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't worried. That meant one of two things. Either she was a damn good liar, or she had gotten too comfortable. I wasn't sure which one was worse. I stood up, walking to the kitchen, watching as she moved around, humming softly under her breath as she pulled out a pan. Just another night. Just another meal. Just another lie. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "How was your day?" She glanced up, smiling. "Oh, the usual. Busy. A little stressful. But I got through it." Lies. I knew exactly where she had been. I nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yeah? Do anything interesting?" She turned back to the stove, stirring something in the pan. "Not really. Just work, errands, the usual stuff." The usual stuff. A hotel room. A city we had never been to together. Her ex. I had to clench my jaw to keep from reacting. She had no idea. And that meant I had all the power. I watched her for a few more moments before pushing away from the counter. "I'm going to go take a shower." She glanced at me again, nodding. "Okay, dinner will be ready soon." Dinner. Like nothing had happened. I walked down the hall into our bedroom, shutting the door behind me. And then I let out a slow breath, my hands curling into fists. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just a moment of weakness on her part. This was betrayal. And she didn't deserve to walk away from it unscathed. I turned on the shower, letting the steam fill the room as I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I wasn't going to lose control. I wasn't going to confront her yet. No, I was going to make sure she regretted every single choice she had made. And I was going to do it on my terms. The water ran hot, steam rising up around me as I stood in the shower, hands braced against the tile. I wasn't washing away the day. I wasn't trying to relax. I was just standing there, letting the heat sink into my skin, letting the sound of the water drown out the thoughts clawing at my mind. This was the moment where most men, weaker men, would break. Where they'd let their emotions get the best of them, punch a wall, let out a scream, maybe even crumble under the weight of betrayal. But I wasn't most men. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I let the water pour over me, watching it swirl down the drain, my mind turning over every detail of the past few months. I was rewinding time, looking at everything through new eyes, seeing all the signs I had ignored. The late nights, the sudden interest in her phone, the way she had stopped reaching for me first. How many times had she left our bed and crawled into his? How many times had she lied to my face, kissed me goodbye, then driven straight to him? I squeezed my eyes shut, my fingers curling into fists against the tile. I didn't let myself sink into the pain of it, didn't let myself feel the hurt. No, that wasn't useful. What was useful was the clarity I had now. She thought she was safe. She thought she had me fooled. She thought she could live two lives and never pay the price. She was wrong. I shut off the water and stepped out, wrapping a towel around my waist, moving with the kind of quiet focus that came with knowing you were about to dismantle someone's reality piece by piece. When I walked back into the bedroom, I heard the soft hum of a show playing from the living room. She was sitting out there, eating dinner, watching some mindless series, acting like today was just another normal night. The fact that she could do that, sit there so comfortable in her lie, only made my hatred for her grow. I changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, took my time, made her wait. She had no idea she was waiting for something, but she was. I finally walked out, casual, easy, like I didn't know she had betrayed me. She looked up from the couch, smiling. Hey, feel better? That voice. That damn voice. So soft, so familiar. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have believed it. Yeah, I said, my tone unreadable. I sat down in my usual spot beside her, watching as she curled up, legs tucked under her, looking comfortable, looking at home. I glanced at the TV. Some drama, something she always watched. I let my gaze drift to her, studying her face as the light flickered against her skin. If I hadn't seen that picture, I would have never suspected a thing. She looked just like she always had, like my wife, but she wasn't. Not anymore. She leaned against me slightly, just a brush of her shoulder against mine, the kind of small, natural touch that came from years of habit. She still had no idea. That was my favorite part. How's work been? I asked, my voice smooth, controlled. She let out a soft sigh. Exhausting. So much going on lately. I feel like I never get a break. A break. I bet she got plenty of breaks in that hotel room. You should take some time off, I said, voice even. She smiled. I wish. But you know how it is. I nodded as if I did. As if I didn't know she had already taken time off with him. She reached for the remote, pausing the show. You're quiet tonight, she said, turning to look at me. I felt her eyes on me, searching for something. Suspicion? No, not yet. But she was noticing something. I gave her a small, tired smile. Just thinking. She tilted her head. About what? I could have said anything. Work. Bills. Some nonsense about a game I saw earlier. But instead, I looked at her, let my gaze linger just long enough to make her wonder. Nothing important. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she smiled, leaning in, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. You worry too much. I smiled back. Yeah, guess I do. I let her sit there, let her think she had put my mind at ease. But I wasn't at ease. I was just getting started. Because while she was lying beside me, pretending I was planning, the next time she saw him, I'd know. The next time she tried to lie, I'd be ready. I had let her play her little game long enough. Now, it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid there, eyes closed, steady breathing, letting her think I had drifted off like I always did. But I was awake, my mind spinning, my body stiff with the weight of everything I now knew. She was right next to me, her body warm under the covers, her breathing slow and even, peaceful, like she hadn't just spent God knows how many nights tangled up with another man. I stared at the ceiling, my hands resting on my chest, fingers twitching with the urge to do something. Confront her? No, not yet. Scream? No point. She didn't deserve an outburst. She deserved to feel this. She deserved to walk around every day wondering if I knew. To wonder if I'd started putting the pieces together, to feel that slow, creeping paranoia settle into her bones. So I let the night stretch on, let my hatred for her settle into something calmer, sharper. I wasn't going to let emotions control me. That's what she would expect. She would expect tears, yelling, an explosion of rage. She wasn't going to get it. Instead, she was going to get something much worse. By morning, my decision was made. The morning after the truth. I felt her shift beside me before I opened my eyes. The bed dipped as she sat up, stretching, letting out a soft sigh. She always woke up before me, usually moving around the room, quietly, careful not to wake me. Today, I made sure to pretend to stay asleep. I listened as she slid out of bed, her footsteps soft as she moved to the bathroom. The sound of water running, the quiet hum of her morning routine. She had no idea that I was listening to her differently now, that every movement she made, every innocent little action, was now evidence. The bathroom door opened again, and I heard her moving around, grabbing clothes, getting dressed. Then the faint buzz of her phone. I kept my breathing slow, steady. I shut body still. I heard the click of her screen turning on. A pause, a soft exhale, a few quick taps. Texting him? I almost turned over right then, almost caught her in the act. But no, I needed to be patient. I gave it another minute, then shifted, making a show of waking up. She turned at the sound, her voice light, normal. Morning, sleepyhead. I cracked my eyes open, blinking like I was still half asleep. Morning. She was standing by the dresser, already dressed, hair brushed, looking like nothing in the world was wrong. Like she wasn't living a lie. Didn't mean to wake you, she said, slipping her earrings on. I forced a lazy smile. Nah, it's fine. You leaving early? She nodded, grabbing her purse. Yeah, busy day. Gotta get a jump on things. A jump on things. Or a jump on him. I nodded, stretching like I had no idea. All right. Have a good day. She walked over, leaned down, and kissed me. I almost pulled away. Almost. But I let her. Let her lips press against mine. Let her act like she was still my wife. Let her think I was still her husband. She pulled back with a smile. Love you. And just like that, she was gone. I laid there for another few minutes, staring at the ceiling, feeling her words settle into my chest. Love you. Did she even mean it? Or was that just another part of the lie? The first move. The moment I heard the front door shut, I got up. No hesitation. No second guessing. I grabbed my phone, opened up the tracking app one had installed the night before. Yeah, I wasn't an idiot. I wasn't just going to sit back and wonder where she went today. No, I was going to know. I had spent half the night installing software, syncing her location to my phone, setting up notifications. She thought she was so damn smart, sneaking around, thinking I was too trusting to ever question her. But I was smarter. I pulled up the map. She was moving, not toward work, not toward anything remotely resembling a professional setting. She was heading downtown. I felt a slow, satisfied smile stretch across my face. I knew exactly where she was going, a familiar destination. I took my time getting dressed, moving with the same kind of quiet focus I had last night. I wasn't rushing. No need to. I wasn't going to confront her today. That would be too easy. No, today was about confirmation. I already knew the truth. I had seen it, but there was something different about witnessing it in real time, about seeing her lies play out right in front of me. So I grabbed my keys, slipped on my jacket, and left. I drove slow, taking a longer route, making sure I stayed behind her on the tracker. I wasn't following her, not directly. I already knew where she was going, and I was right. I pulled up to a high-rise hotel in the middle of the city, parking a few blocks away. Watched from a distance as she stepped out of her car, adjusting her clothes, checking her reflection in the window before heading inside. So careful, so practiced. I didn't move, didn't go after her, didn't storm inside, demanding answers. Because I didn't need to. She had already given me all the answers I needed. I sat there in my car, watching the entrance, feeling a strange, almost eerie sense of calm settle over me. She thought she was untouchable. That was her first mistake, and it was going to be her last. I sat in my car, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel as I watched the entrance to the hotel. My pulse was steady now, no rage, no panic, just a quiet, controlled focus. She had no idea I was here. No idea that I had followed her in the way a hunter tracks its prey, patient and unseen. I glanced down at my phone. watching her location settle inside the hotel. She wasn't in the lobby. No, she was higher up, somewhere in one of those expensive, dimly lit rooms where people whispered promises they never intended to keep. My wife was in there with another man, and she thought she was getting away with it. I could feel it now, the power shifting, the control returning to my hands. She had been playing this game, thinking I was clueless, thinking she had all the cards. But she didn't. I did. The hotel. I took my time before stepping out of the car. No rush. I wasn't here to catch her in the act. Not yet. I wanted more. More evidence. More proof. More ways to dismantle the lie she had built around me. So I walked into the hotel like I belonged there. Head up, steps measured, face unreadable. I had always been good at blending in when I needed to. People only notice you when you want them to. The lobby was sleek, polished marble floors reflecting the golden glow of the chandeliers. A handful of people moved through, guests, staff, businessmen caught up in conversations. No one paid me any attention. Perfect. I spotted the elevators at the back, a few guests stepping in and out, staff carrying trays of food and bottles of champagne to rooms where secrets were kept behind locked doors. I made my way to the concierge desk instead. A young woman with dark hair and tired eyes greeted me with a polite, professional smile. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" I leaned against the desk, keeping my tone casual like I belonged there. "Hey, yeah, I think my wife's already checked in. I just got into town, and I forgot which room she booked." The woman hesitated. "Do you have a name on the reservation?" I smiled. "Yeah, her name. But if you could just tell me which room number, I'd really appreciate it." "She's expecting me." I let my tone dip, just enough to sound bothered, like I was an exhausted husband, not a man tracking his wife's affair. The woman hesitated again, but then nodded, turning to the computer. "What's the last name?" I gave it to her. My wife's name. A few clicks, a short pause, then, "Looks like she's in a suite on the 24th floor." Suite. Not just a room. A damn suite. She was comfortable here. Settled. Like this wasn't her first time. I clenched my jaw, forcing my expression to stay neutral. "Great. Thanks." I turned away, heading toward the elevators, feeling the weight of it settle in. She had done this before. This wasn't just a one-time mistake, some stupid lapse in judgment. She had planned this, booked a suite, taken the time to set this up. She had lied to me so easily, so effortlessly, and walked straight into another man's arms like it was second nature. And she thought I didn't know. The elevator ride. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with a soft chime. The numbers ticked upward, slow and steady, the air inside thick with that artificial scent hotels pumped into the air to make people feel comfortable. It didn't work. Nothing felt comfortable anymore. I knew I wouldn't go to her door. Not yet. That wasn't the plan. But I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to know. The elevator stopped, and I stepped into the quiet, carpeted hallway. It was almost eerie how peaceful it was. No sounds, no voices, just the distant hum of the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows at the end of the hall. I walked slowly, deliberately, scanning the doors. Suite 2410. I stopped a few feet away, heart steady, hands in my pockets. I listened. Nothing at first. Then a soft sound. A laugh. Hers. My fingers curled into fists inside my pockets, but I forced myself to stay still. More movement. Footsteps. The faint clink of glass. I could picture it so easily. The way she probably looked at him, the way she tilted her head when she smiled, the way she let her fingers trail over his arm, just like she used to do to me. And she had the audacity to kiss me goodbye this morning. The urge to break down the door, to rip apart everything inside, was almost overwhelming. But I didn't, because this wasn't about an explosion of rage. This was about control. I had it now. Not her. Not him. Me. I turned away and walked back toward the elevators, my steps silent against the plush carpet. She had no idea what was coming. The beginning of the end. I didn't go home that night. Home wasn't home anymore. Instead, I drove. The city blurred past, neon lights flickering against the windshield, my hands steady on the wheel. I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was going. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my mind was already 10 steps ahead. I got out, walking toward the building, my footsteps slow, deliberate. I knocked once. The door opened a moment later, and a familiar face looked back at me, one I hadn't seen in years. His expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features. "Well, damn. Didn't expect to see you here." I smiled. "Yeah, well, got a business proposition for you." He stepped aside, letting me in, curiosity in his eyes. And as I stepped into that dimly lit apartment, I knew one thing for certain. My wife thought she had played me, but she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The apartment smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke, a reminder of the kind of life I had left behind a long time ago. But standing here now, feeling the weight of betrayal settle into something colder, sharper, I realized I was right back where I started. The man in front of me leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying me with that same knowing smirk he always had. Ryan, an old friend, or at least he used to be. We hadn't talked in years, not since I had grown up and left this kind of life behind. He had stayed the same, dirty money, underground dealings, the kind of work that made you rich but also got you killed if you weren't careful. He flicked his cigarette into an ashtray, exhaling slowly. "So, business proposition, huh? Gotta say, didn't expect you to come knocking after all this time." I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "Yeah, well, things change." He raised an eyebrow. "That's so." I didn't bother explaining. I wasn't here to catch up. I was here because Ryan was the kind of guy who could get things done, things that needed to be done quietly. And I needed something. Information. Proof. Revenge. "You still have people who track things?" I asked, keeping my tone even. His smirk widened. "You know me, man. Always got eyes on people. Who you looking for?" I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward him. The picture. The one from my wife's phone. Ryan's smirk faded as he studied it. He let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's rough." I didn't need sympathy. I needed results. "Can you find out who he is? Where he works? What his routine is?" Ryan looked at me for a long moment, then leaned back against the counter, rubbing his jaw. "You don't know." "I have a guess," I admitted, "but I want to be sure." Ryan nodded, tapping his fingers against the countertop. "All right. Yeah, I can do that. How long will it take?" "Few days, maybe less. Depends on how careful this guy is." He eyed me, curiosity flickering in his gaze. "You planning something?" I met his eyes. "Yeah. Messy or clean?" "Clean. For now." He grinned. "Attaboy. Always with a careful type." I didn't respond. He moved to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and cracked it open. "All right. I'll get my guys on it. But you got to tell me one thing." I waited. Ryan took a sip, then set the bottle down. "Why not just confront her? Why go through all this?" I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. "Because she thinks she's winning. She thinks she's getting away with it." Ryan nodded like he understood. "And you want to make her feel it first." I didn't have to answer. He already knew. A long night. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove. Not aimlessly, purposefully. I needed to clear my head, needed to let the rage simmer into something useful. So I found myself parked outside the hotel again. It was late now, past midnight. The street lights buzzed faintly, and the occasional car passed, but the city was mostly quiet. I stared up at the building, at the room where I knew she was, where they were. Did she ever think about me while she was with him? Did she ever feel even a second of guilt? Or had I just been an afterthought all along? I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe. None of that mattered anymore, because this wasn't about pain. This was about control. The lights in the suite were still on. I waited. Half an hour. An hour. Then movement. A shadow passed by the window. Then another. And then the unmistakable sight of her. My wife, dressed in nothing but a robe, standing near the window, her hair damp, skin glowing from the warm hotel lights. She was smiling. At him. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Then, without another thought, I turned the car back on and drove away. Not because I was giving up, but because I had just made up my mind. She wasn't going to walk away from this. She was going to crawl. The next move, by the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun was starting to rise. The house was dark, quiet, empty. She wasn't home yet. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me, and moved through the house in silence. Our bedroom was exactly the way we had left it. Our bed, our pictures, our life, and all of it was a lie. I stood there, staring at the framed wedding photo on the dresser. She had looked so happy that day. So had I. And now, I couldn't even look at her without feeling disgusted. I grabbed the frame, turned it face down, and walked out. The return of a liar. She came home 2 hours later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, scrolling through my phone like it was just another morning. She walked in quietly, setting her purse down, stretching like she had just woken up from a long, restful sleep. She had no idea I had been watching her all night. "Morning," she said, stifling a yawn. "You're up early." I smiled. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She walked over, pressing a kiss to my temple. "I missed you." The words were like acid, but I kept my face neutral. "Yeah." She nodded, moving toward the fridge. "Of course. You know I hate sleeping alone." I almost laughed. Instead, I took another sip of my coffee and watched as she moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just spent the night in another man's bed. She thought she was fooling me. She had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. She had no idea that by the time she found out the truth, it would already be too late. Because this wasn't just about exposing her. This was about ruining her. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. I watched her move around the kitchen like she had done 1,000 times before, like she was still the woman I thought I had married. She reached into the fridge, pulled out the orange juice, and poured herself a glass. Then she turned, leaning against the counter, taking a slow sip while scrolling through her phone. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't hesitant. She was completely at ease. And that told me everything I needed to know. She had done this before. Maybe not always with him. Maybe there had been others. Maybe this wasn't just a recent thing. Maybe I had been a fool for much longer than I realized. I had spent so much time wondering why she had done it, but now, standing here, watching her act so normal, I understood. She did it because she could. Because she never thought she'd get caught. Because she thought I was too trusting. Too stupid. And now she was looking at her phone, probably texting him, planning the next time she'd sneak off, probably laughing to herself, thinking she had gotten away with it. She had no idea I was about to tear her entire world apart. I took another sip of my coffee, watching her closely. She didn't even notice. "You working from home today?" she asked, glancing up at me. I nodded. "Yeah, got a lot to catch up on." She smiled. "Me too. Might be a long day." "A long day." "Sure. A long day of pretending. A long day of texting her lover, maybe setting up another meeting, maybe lying to my face again." She didn't even blink as she walked past me, setting her phone down on the counter, stretching like she was still tired. I stared at that phone, something dark curling in my chest. She had no problem lying to me. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I wanted to know what she was saying. I wanted to see the messages, the proof, but I knew she was careful. She wouldn't leave a text out in the open. That's why I had already planned ahead. Because I wasn't guessing anymore. I was tracking, and she didn't even know it. The digital trap. I had spent the last 2 nights setting everything up. First, the location tracking. That was easy. A simple app installed quietly, syncing with my own phone, showing me where she was at all times. Then the messages. She was careful, sure. Probably deleted things as she went. But she wasn't a tech genius. She didn't know that her phone backed everything up automatically. She didn't know I had already cloned her cloud account, that I could see the deleted messages, the conversations she thought were gone forever. She had no idea that every time she texted him, I was seeing it too. And so I sat there, drinking my coffee, waiting. Because all I needed was a moment. A single moment. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled slightly, then picked it up, typing something quickly before setting it down again. I didn't move. I didn't react. But inside, I was already smiling. The truth in writing. The moment she stepped away, I picked up my own phone, opened the cloned account, and scrolled to the most recent message. There it was. A name. A conversation. And the kind of proof no one could deny. "Miss you already." "Me too. Last night was amazing. Wish we could have had the whole night." "Soon. I'll come up with something." "What about next week?" "Might be tricky. I'll let you know." "You're worth it." My fingers tightened around my phone, but I didn't let my expression change. There it was. The truth. In black and white. She was still planning, still lying. And she had no idea I was reading every word. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen, letting the reality of it settle in. I had never been a stupid man, but I'd been blind. Not anymore. Letting her dig her own grave. I put my phone down just as she walked back in. She smiled at me, completely oblivious. Wanting to make lunch later? I smiled back. Yeah, that'd be great. She had no idea. None. And that was the best part. I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. I was going to let her think she was still in control. I was going to let her keep sneaking around, keep sending messages, keep lying to my face. Because the longer she lied, the deeper she dug her own grave. And when I finally showed her what I knew, it wasn't just going to be an argument. It wasn't just going to be a breakup. It was going to be destruction. Total, complete, and irreversible. The first strike. The rest of the day passed in a haze of quiet tension, at least for me. For her, it was just another day. She worked, sent texts, smiled at me like nothing was wrong. And every time her phone buzzed, every time she glanced at it and thought I wasn't watching, I knew. By evening, I was ready. I had the messages, the proof, the plan. And so I made the first move. Hey, I said casually, setting down my fork at dinner. We should take a trip. She blinked, caught off guard. A trip? Yeah. I shrugged. It's been a while since we've gone anywhere. Thought it might be nice to get away. I watched her closely, saw the hesitation, the way her mind immediately started calculating. She couldn't say yes, because she already had plans. Plans that didn't include me. And I watched, really watched, as the realization settled in, as she tried to come up with an excuse, as her brain scrambled for a way to get out of this without making it obvious. She hesitated just a second too long. Then she smiled, soft and apologetic. Oh, babe, I'd love to, but work's crazy right now. Maybe in a couple of months. A perfect lie. One that would have worked if I didn't already know the truth. I smiled. Yeah, maybe. She looked relieved. And that was her second mistake. Because now I knew she was planning to see him again. And by the time that day came, she wouldn't have a husband anymore. She'd have nothing. Because I was going to make sure that by the time I walked away, I'd take everything with me.